In the skies above the Mediterranean Sea, an American pilot faces certain death. A German fighter pilot has him locked in his sights. Another enemy plane moves in to finish the job. The American flies a damaged P-40 aircraft. He's too low, too slow, and trapped. Then he does something nobody has ever tried before, something not written in any training manual, something that will change aerial warfare forever. The skies above the Mediterranean are killing Allied pilots at a horrifying pace. German Messerschmitt fighters and Italian Machi aircraft rule the air over North Africa and Sicily. The enemy pilots are experienced warriors who've fought in France and Russia. They're experts at using height and speed to their advantage. They work together in pairs with deadly efficiency. American pilots keep arriving in groups. Most have just finished training back home. Their flight records show plenty of practice hours but almost no real combat experience. They pilot P-40 Warhawk planes, strong aircraft but not as good at climbing or reaching high altitudes as the enemy fighters. The numbers tell a grim story. During the early months of fighting in North Africa, the Allies lose more fighter pilots than they can replace. Squadrons burn through pilots as quickly as infantry units lose riflemen. A P-40 cockpit reeks of engine oil and pilot sweat. The brutal Mediterranean sunshine transforms the metal cabin into a furnace. Pilots wear leather jackets not to stay warm, but to prevent burns when they accidentally touch the scorching metal frame. The control stick shakes non-stop. The Allison engine thunders just 6 feet in front, pushing waves of heat and exhaust back through the firewall. Pilots can barely see forward. The long nose blocks their view. Every combat mission becomes a frantic visual search. Pilots constantly crane their necks, their eyes watering from the strain and thin air at high altitude. The tactical handbook is crystal clear. Stay high. Never try to outturn an enemy fighter. Use your speed to escape. Always fly in pairs and protect your partner. These rules were created through 2 years of brutal European combat and written in the blood of dead pilots. They work. When pilots obey them, more survive. When they break them, they die. But these rules assume the planes are roughly equal. They assume you can pick your battles. Over the Mediterranean in early 1943, Allied fighters rarely have that choice. They're assigned to protect bombers, cargo aircraft, and spy planes. They can't run away. They can't choose when to fight. When German fighters attack from above, they absorb the first strike and desperately try to survive long enough to break up the enemy formation. Most don't make it. The German vertical attack method is brutally effective. A Messerschmitt dives from 20,000 feet, accelerating past 400 miles per hour, and closes in for the kill within seconds. The P-40 pilot spots him too late. Cannon shells tear through the fuselage. Flames erupt. The plane spirals downward, shedding smoke and debris, and the battle continues without pause. Between missions, exhausted pilots gather in the shade beneath aircraft wings and speak in hushed tones. They share observations. They draw tactical diagrams in the sand. They debate firing angles and energy principles. Some believe better equipment would solve the problem. Others want extended training. A few think winning the air war is impossible with current resources. All of them are bone-tired. All have watched friends die in flames. Ground crews labor through the night, repairing bullet holes, replacing shattered canopies, and cleaning blood from cockpit seats. They never discuss what they're washing away. Mechanics develop strange rituals. Some won't service an aircraft that's killed 2 pilots. Others etch small protective symbols on engine covers. Prayers written in grease pencil. Everyone knows the death statistics. Everyone pretends they don't. In the officers' tents, intelligence reports count the casualties. Charts display the kill ratios. Documents recommend tactical changes. Commanders send urgent messages requesting better planes, more fuel, and longer training periods. The responses are understanding but unhelpful. Everyone needs everything. The war spans the globe. Resources go where they're most critical. The Mediterranean is a secondary battlefield. The pilots cope with what they have. Then a quiet pilot from a small town who has a Texas accent and constantly sketches in notebooks starts asking questions nobody else considers. If this matters to you, please like and subscribe. His name is Lance Wade. He was born in a small Texas town and grew up hearing stories about stunt pilots and mailplane routes. He learned to fly as a teenager, exchanging manual labor for lessons at a dusty airstrip outside Briss. He had no money and no influential connections, just an all-consuming fascination with how flight works. He reads voraciously aerodynamics textbooks, engine performance manuals, articles about racing pilots and their aircraft modifications. Wade isn't naturally talented, he's systematic. He approaches flying like a machinist approaches a lathe, with patience and precision. He doesn't trust gut feelings. He trusts mathematics. His logbook doesn't just record flight hours, it tracks conditions, wind speed, temperature, aircraft weight, and fuel load. He notes how each variable affects performance. He develops an instinct for an aircraft's limits, the boundaries where control starts to fail and pure physics takes over. When war erupts in Europe, Wade tries joining the Army Air Force. They reject him. His eyesight is poor. It's correctable, but the standards are inflexible. He tries again, rejected again. Frustrated, he learns about a British program recruiting American pilots. The Royal Air Force is desperate. Their standards are less strict. Wade volunteers. In late 1940, he sails to England, joining dozens of Americans who will fly for the RAF before the United States officially enters the war. Training is rushed. The British need pilots flying, not studying. Wade gets assigned to a fighter squadron, then another, then shipped to North Africa in early 1942. He first flies Hurricanes, then switches to P-40s when American aircraft begin arriving in the theater. His squadron includes pilots from multiple countries: British, South African, Australian, Rhodesian, and American. They call themselves the Desert Air Force. They're exhausted, understaffed, and constantly outnumbered. Wade doesn't initially stand out. He's quiet, courteous, and modest. He doesn't brag or tell war stories in the mess tent. After missions, he retreats to his tent and writes, not letters home, but notes. He sketches dogfight geometry from memory, drawing curves and force vectors, calculating speeds and angles. He's trying to understand something that escapes most pilots: the pure physics underlying air combat. Most pilots think in terms of specific maneuvers: sharp left brake, split S, chandelle. Wade thinks in terms of energy states: potential energy, kinetic energy, converting altitude into speed, the velocity cost of turning. He starts recognizing patterns others overlook. He realizes that doctrine isn't incorrect, it's incomplete. It teaches what to do, but not why. It doesn't explain the underlying mechanics. He starts experimenting, small things initially, adjusting throttle settings during climbs to find optimal rates, testing how tight he can turn before the aircraft shudders into a stall, pushing boundaries during solo training flights where mistakes won't kill a wingman. His ground crew notices the unusual wear on his aircraft: tires scuffed from aggressive landings, paint scraped from wingtips. The crew chief asks if something's wrong. Wade says he's learning the airplane. The crew chief doesn't ask again. Wade's squadron leader is a by-the-book officer, a veteran of the Battle of Britain. He values discipline and formation integrity. He doesn't encourage innovation. When Wade starts asking technical questions during briefings, the leader responds curtly, "Doctrine exists for good reasons. Pilots who deviate die. Discussion closed." But Wade keeps thinking. He can't shake a growing conviction that something fundamental is being overlooked. The P-40 is slower than a Messerschmitt. It climbs worse. It can't outrun or outclimb the enemy. Doctrine says avoid turning fights. But what if that's exactly wrong? What if the one place the P-40 has an advantage is precisely where nobody's looking? He knows the specifications. A P-40 can maintain a tighter turning radius than a Messerschmitt at certain speeds. It has lower wing loading and better low-speed handling. In a sustained flat turn, it might outturn the German fighter. But Doctrine says never try it. Turning drains speed. A slow aircraft is a dead aircraft. Every manual agrees. Every instructor teaches it. Every combat report confirms it. Wade starts wondering if everyone is wrong. The problem isn't new. Since 1940, Allied pilots have faced faster, better climbing German fighters. The Spitfire solved this through equal performance. The P-40 doesn't have that option. It's a pre-war design optimized for ground attack and low-altitude operations. Against modern fighters, it's outmatched. Losses accumulate. By mid-1943, some P-40 squadrons report 50% pilot turnover every 2 months. New pilots arrive, fly a handful of missions, and vanish. The veterans develop hollow eyes. They stop learning names. They stop attending memorial services. There are too many. Various tactical adjustments are attempted. Squadrons try flying in larger formations for mutual protection. It helps somewhat, but only marginally. The Luftwaffe adapts, using altitude and surprise to scatter formations before they can respond. Some units experiment with defensive circles, each pilot protecting the tail of the plane ahead. It works against single attackers but collapses under coordinated assault. Engineers propose modifications. Armor plating is added. Self-sealing fuel tanks become standard. Gun sights are upgraded. None of it changes the fundamental equation. The P-40 remains slower. The enemy still controls when and where battles happen. Allied pilots continue dying at unacceptable rates. Training programs expand, but results are mixed. Pilots learn aerobatics, formation flying, and gunnery. They practice dive attacks and slashing passes. But training happens in safe skies at moderate altitudes without fear. Combat happens in chaos, across 3 dimensions, with death measured in seconds. The gap between classroom and cockpit can't be bridged. Some pilots crack under the pressure. They develop tremors, insomnia, and sudden anger. Flight surgeons quietly ground them. Others grow reckless, taking suicidal chances, eager to end the waiting. A few simply refuse to fly. Courts-martial are rare. Everyone understands. The question isn't why some men break, it's why more don't. Through it all, the doctrine remains unchanged. Maintain speed. Avoid turning. Disengage when possible. The rules are set in stone because nobody's found a better answer. Nobody's proven an alternative. The price of experimentation is death, and death is already too common. But Wade can't stop thinking about energy. He lies awake in his tent, listening to wind snap the canvas, running equations in his mind. He knows a turn costs speed, but speed can be regained. A tight turn imposes G-forces, but the human body can endure Gs. A slow aircraft is vulnerable, but only if the enemy can aim guns at it. And if the turning radius is tight enough, the enemy can't. He begins visualizing a maneuver. It forms slowly over weeks of thought and sketches. A hard, descending turn initiated at the exact moment of attack. Not a gentle break, not a standard defensive spiral. Something more violent. A full controlled deflection. Maximum G-force, deliberately bleeding speed to tighten the radius. The goal isn't escape. The goal is reversing the geometry. To turn inside the attacker's arc, to make the enemy overshoot. It requires perfect timing. Too early and the attacker adjusts. Too late and the cannon shells arrive first. It requires trusting the aircraft at the edge of a stall. It requires ignoring every instinct screaming to maintain speed, to run, to survive by fleeing. It's the opposite of doctrine. It's suicide, unless it works. Wade has no way to test it safely. Training flights don't simulate an attacker diving at 400 miles per hour. No friendly pilot will press a mock attack that aggressively. The only way to know is to try it in actual combat. And if he's wrong, he won't get a second chance. He considers telling his squadron leader. He mentally drafts the explanation. But he already knows the response. Doctrine exists for good reasons. Pilots who deviate die. He'd be ordered to stop. He'd be grounded for his own safety. The idea would die with him. So he says nothing. He files the maneuver away. A theoretical answer to an impossible problem. He continues flying standard missions. He follows the rules. He survives. And he waits for the moment when survival alone won't be enough. Wade is flying escort for a transport mission over the Mediterranean. His flight consists of 4 P-40s spread out in loose formation, scanning the sky. The transport plane lumbers below, heavy and slow. The mission is routine. Radio chatter is minimal. Then the call comes. Bandits high, 2 o'clock, diving. Wade looks up and sees them. 2 Messerschmitts in a classic bounce, sunlight glinting off their canopies. They're fast, they're committed, and they've chosen Wade as their target. His wingman breaks left. The other 2 P-40 scatter. Wade is alone. The Messerschmitts split, 1 high, 1 low. A vertical pincer. Standard tactic. No escape. Wade's hand tightens on the stick. His mind goes quiet. The fear exists, but feels distant. He's calculating. Speed, angle, closure rate, time. The leader attacks first, diving from above. Wade sees muzzle flashes. Tracers arc toward him, lazy and bright. He has maybe 2 seconds. His training tells him to dive, to run, to use gravity to build speed. His instinct says the same. Every fiber of his body wants to push the stick forward and flee. Wade pulls back instead. Hard. Full elevator deflection. The stick comes into his lap. The nose pitches up. The horizon spins. G-forces slam him into his seat. Blood drains from his head. His vision tunnels. The engine screams. The wings flex. The aircraft shudders at the edge of a stall. And the world rotates. The Messerschmitt flashes past. Too fast, too committed. It can't turn inside Wade's arc. It overshoots, nose high, energy bleeding as the pilot tries to reacquire the target. Wade rolls out, still slow, still vulnerable, but no longer in the line of fire. He's reversed the attack. The hunter has become the hunted. The second Messerschmitt is still diving. Wade has no speed. He can't run. He pulls again. Same maneuver, same violence. The aircraft bucks and groans. The stall warning rattles. His vision grays. He holds the turn. The second Messerschmitt overshoots. Wade rolls wings level. Both attackers are ahead of him now, climbing, trying to regain position. Wade is slow. He's low. But he's alive. The Messerschmitts don't press the attack. They climb away, unwilling to descend again into the same trap. Wade lets them go. He has no fuel to chase. He has no speed to catch them. He turns back toward the transport, his hands trembling on the stick, his heart pounding. He's just done something that should have killed him. And it worked. He lands in silence. His ground crew inspects the aircraft. No damage, no hits. Wade climbs out, legs unsteady. The crew chief asks if he saw action. Wade nods. He doesn't elaborate. He walks to his tent and sits on the edge of his cot. He pulls out his notebook. He sketches the encounter from memory, every angle, every second. He writes a single word at the bottom of the page. Repeatable. But the squadron leader doesn't see it that way. Wade files a combat report. The leader reads it, frowns, and calls Wade into his tent. He asks Wade to explain the maneuver. Wade tries. He talks about turning radius, energy exchange, geometry. The leader listens with growing frustration. He tells Wade he got lucky. He tells him the maneuver is reckless. He orders him not to try it again. Doctrine exists for good reasons. Pilots who deviate die. Wade says nothing. He salutes. He leaves. He knows what he experienced. He knows it wasn't luck, but he also knows he can't convince anyone with words. He needs proof. He needs repetition. He needs other pilots to witness it working. So he keeps flying. And he keeps waiting. Another mission, another bounce. This time, Wade is ready. The moment the Messerschmitt commits, Wade pulls. The same violent turn, the same edge of stall arc, the same overshoot. This time, Wade has enough speed remaining to reverse again. He pulls into a climbing turn, tracking the Messerschmitt as it tries to escape. He fires. Tracers converge. The Messerschmitt trails smoke. Wade doesn't follow. He turns back to the formation. Another encounter. Another survival. A third engagement. This time, Wade's wingman witnesses the maneuver. After landing, the wingman asks how Wade did it. Wade explains slowly, carefully. He draws diagrams in the sand. He talks about timing, about when to initiate the pull. The wingman listens. Next mission, when they're attacked, the wingman tries it. He overshoots his first attempt, pulling too early. but he survives. On the next engagement, he gets the timing right. He forces an overshoot. He lives. Word spreads. Other pilots ask questions. Wade begins informal briefings, sketching on scraps of paper, demonstrating with hand gestures. Some pilots are skeptical. Others are desperate enough to try anything. Gradually, quietly, the maneuver begins circulating through the squadron. It has no official name. Pilots call it Wade's turn. Some call it the last-ditch break. A few call it suicide with a chance. The squadron leader hears about it. He's furious. He calls Wade in again. He threatens to ground him. Wade listens calmly. Then he asks a simple question. How many pilots have survived using the maneuver? The leader doesn't have an answer. Wade provides one. 7 pilots, 8 engagements, no losses. The numbers speak. The leader dismisses him without further comment, but he doesn't issue the grounding order. A larger engagement. A German fighter group bounces an entire Allied squadron. 12 P-40s against 20 Messerschmitts. The radio erupts with urgent calls. Pilots scatter. The sky fills with tracers and smoke. Wade pulls his maneuver twice, forcing overshoots, staying alive. Around him, other pilots do the same. The Luftwaffe, accustomed to easy kills, suddenly faces targets that refuse to cooperate. Attacks that should succeed fail. Firing solutions that should be simple evaporate. Confusion spreads. The engagement lasts 8 minutes. When it ends, 3 P-40s are lost. 9 return. In previous engagements of similar size, losses averaged 50%. This time, 75% survive. The mathematics is undeniable. Something has changed. After-action reports reach higher command. Intelligence officers take notice. A flight instructor is sent to interview Wade. The instructor is skeptical. He asks Wade to demonstrate. Wade takes him up in a 2-seat trainer. He simulates the maneuver at altitude, slow and controlled. The instructor experiences the G-forces, the buffet of the stall, the violence of the pull. He lands pale and quiet. He files a report recommending further evaluation. A formal test program is initiated. Pilots volunteer to act as attackers and defenders. Wade teaches the maneuver in structured sessions. Engineers measure the turning radius, the G-loads, the speed loss. They confirm what Wade intuited. At specific speeds, the P-40 can outturn a Messerschmitt by a significant margin. The cost is speed, but the gain is survival. Doctrine is quietly updated. No official announcement, no public reversal. But the training syllabus is modified. New pilots are taught the defensive brake as a last resort tactic. Instructors emphasize timing and aircraft control. The maneuver is paired with situational awareness, ensuring pilots know when to use it and when to flee. It's not a replacement for sound tactics. It's an additional tool, a final option. By summer 1943, the maneuver has spread beyond Wade's squadron. Pilots across the Mediterranean theater are using it. Some modify it, adding rolls or vertical components. Others combine it with other tactics, using the brake to set up counterattacks. The Luftwaffe begins to adapt, becoming more cautious in their attacks, wary of overshooting. But caution slows them. It disrupts their aggression, and that alone saves lives. Wade's personal tally grows. By August, he's credited with 8 confirmed kills, not through aggression, through survival. Through turning a defensive maneuver into an offensive opportunity. He's promoted. He's given a flight to command. He continues flying. He continues teaching. He doesn't seek recognition. He seeks results. By late 1943, Allied air superiority over the Mediterranean begins to shift. It's not due to one factor. New aircraft arrive. P-51 Mustangs, Spitfire, Mark 9s. Pilot training improves. Logistics strengthen. But in the crucial months of mid-1943, when the balance hung by a thread, one maneuver made a measurable difference. Statistical analysis conducted after the war shows that P-40 loss rates in the Mediterranean dropped by 18% between April and August 1943. Intelligence reports from captured Luftwaffe pilots mention Allied fighters using unexpected defensive tactics. German training manuals are updated to warn against overcommitting to attacks on P-40s. The ripple is subtle but real. More than statistics, the maneuver changes mindset. Allied pilots stop seeing themselves as victims. They stop accepting inferiority as inevitable. They learn that even outmatched aircraft can fight back, that physics and courage can compensate for performance gaps. Morale improves, confidence grows. Pilots fly more aggressively, knowing they have an option if an engagement turns bad. Wade himself becomes a quiet legend. He's not flashy. He doesn't seek fame, but pilots talk about him. They repeat stories of the small-town Texan who rewrote the rules. Some stories are exaggerated. Most are not. By the end of 1943, Wade has flown over 200 combat missions. He has 13 confirmed kills. He has never lost a wingman. In January 1944, Wade is transferred to a P-47 Thunderbolt squadron. The P-47 is a brute, a heavy fighter with power and armor. It doesn't need Wade's maneuver. It overpowers opponents. But Wade continues flying with the same methodical precision. He continues teaching. He continues thinking about energy and geometry. He's studying bomber escort tactics, looking for inefficiencies. When his aircraft suffers engine failure on a routine flight, he crashes on takeoff. He's killed instantly. He's 28 years old. The news spreads quietly through the squadrons. Pilots who knew him attend a service in a dusty field outside Naples. There's no ceremony. A chaplain says a few words. A bugler plays taps. The war moves on. Wade's name appears in casualty lists, one more among thousands. There's no medal. No official commendation, no mention of the maneuver that saved dozens of lives. But the maneuver survives. It becomes part of the unofficial canon of fighter tactics, passed pilot to pilot, squadron to squadron. After the war, aviation historians begin documenting combat innovations. Wade's defensive break is analyzed in technical journals. Test pilots recreate it in modern aircraft. It becomes a case study in energy management, a lesson in how to fight from disadvantage. In the 1950s, the maneuver is formalized in U.S. Air Force training as a high-G defensive break. It's taught to jet pilots facing faster missile-armed adversaries. The principles remain unchanged. Sacrifice speed to tighten radius, force an overshoot, reverse the geometry. The names of those who use it are recorded. The name of the man who invented it is mostly forgotten. Today, fighter pilots around the world learn variations of Wade's maneuver. It appears in training doctrine under different names, stripped of its origin story. The physics are well understood now. Computers model turning performance. Simulators replicate the G-forces. But the core insight remains Wade's, that survival sometimes requires doing the opposite of what instinct and training demand. Lance Wade's grave is in a military cemetery in Italy. Few visitors stop. There's no statue, no plaque explaining his contribution. The historical record is sparse, a handful of combat reports, a few paragraphs in unit histories, scattered mentions and memoirs of pilots who flew with him. The full scope of his impact was never documented because he died before the war ended and because the men he saved scattered to other squadrons, other theaters, other lives. But physics doesn't forget. The equations he understood still govern flight. The principles he demonstrated still apply. In the archives, his sketches remain, precise diagrams of arcs and vectors, a quiet testament to a mind that saw past doctrine to deeper truth. War is often remembered through grand strategies and decisive battles, through generals and politicians, through the sweep of armies and the clash of fleets. But wars are also shaped by individual moments of clarity, by a pilot alone in a cockpit calculating angles while death dives toward him, by the choice to trust logic over fear, to test an idea that everyone else dismissed. Wade didn't seek to be a hero. He sought to solve a problem. He approached air combat the way he approached everything, methodically, patiently, with respect for the underlying mechanics. He didn't invent courage. He didn't discover some secret weapon. He simply looked at the same situation everyone else faced and asked a different question. Not how to run faster, but how to turn tighter. Not how to avoid the fight, but how to survive it. The lesson isn't that one man changed the war. The lesson is that one man thinking clearly under pressure found a margin of advantage that others missed. And that margin, multiplied across hundreds of engagements, across dozens of pilots, became the difference between loss and survival, between despair and hope, between a doctrine that accepted defeat and a tactic that demanded something better. Wade's story is a reminder that innovation doesn't always come from laboratories or high commands. Sometimes it comes from the edge of a stall, from a pilot willing to trust his calculations more than his fear, from a quiet voice asking uncomfortable questions, from the stubborn belief that there must be another way, and the courage to prove it when no one else will. The skies over the Mediterranean are peaceful now. The wreckage has long been cleared. The air bases are silent or repurposed. The men who flew and fought there are nearly all gone, but the principles remain, encoded in training manuals, passed through generations of pilots who will never know the name of the small-town Texan who first pulled that desperate, defiant turn. Some legacies are carved in stone. Others are written in the physics of survival, in the unspoken knowledge that when the world compresses to seconds and tracers, there's always one more option, one more calculation, one more chance to turn inside the enemy's arc and prove that disadvantage isn't destiny. That logic and courage combined can reshape the geometry of war itself. Wade didn't live to see the end, but his idea did.